before we go live on YouTube because copyright reasons. But yeah, Don't You Say No. That was R. Kelly. Don't You Say No. Now, if you've heard that song before, or if you actually listen to the lyrics, R. Kelly goes on to talk about how, I'm always fronting the bill. I'm always playing that role of a solid man. You know, I'm always taking care of you and your friends. Just doing all the things that I feel a certain way about paying for friends. It's okay. Yeah, certain situations, it's not something that should be a habit. Um, but and basically, he at the conclusion of the song, he starts to say, I'm getting tired of you saying no. Now, put all his personal stuff aside and think of it as you in a manner of actually being in a relationship with a girl, or your girl or your wife. There are other reasons for it. If you're getting turned down for sex and there's no real reason why, especially if it's not like a reason of her being on their monthly cycle. But there's a reason for it. But then he goes on to talk about, I've been doing these things for you. Now what you gonna do for me? You know, I ain't spending no first class trips if you ain't working those first class hips, right? I've been doing these things for you. Now what you gonna do for me? Huh? I ain't trying to spend no cash if you ain't spending that ass, right? So you get a lot of guys who get into this whole transactional sex thing. Now, usually when somebody hears transactional sex, they think of like maybe the red light district or something like that, where as in prostitution. No. But that is one form of transactional sex, but that is not the transactional sex that I'm talking about. I'm talking about um, exchanging money indirectly for sex. So you have a lot of guys who come in who don't necessarily have game, who don't necessarily know how to talk to girls, and they believe, all right, I got this money, I'm gonna flash this money, I'm gonna trick, and it ain't tricking if you got it right. So, so they're gonna trick on her. They're gonna buy all these things. They're gonna take her out to nice places, fly her out, take her on trips, and in return, they're going to be expecting some mushu. They're going to be expecting some love making. They're going to be expecting something of that sort. They're going to be expecting some sex. But a lot of guys do this usually when they don't have game, or they do this usually, and sometimes it works, but the guys do this and they don't understand that the type of sex that you're getting isn't what you want, right? Because you can have all that money and you can build a relationship of transactional sex, but this girl will still not be loyal to you. She will still leave you, and she won't necessarily want to stay with you long term. Why? Because it's transactional sex. You could be spending and providing for her, but then she still has another guy on the side that, maybe she'll stay with, or maybe she'll cheat on you with, right? But that's one of the consequences of doing transactional sex. What you should want is validational sex, right? Uh, and a lot of the times, a lot of guys get finessed, right? So let's say if you're spending all this money, you're doing all these things, and she still ain't let you hit. She still ain't let you cut. All right. She wasn't having it. So then what? Then you end up like R. Kelly at the end of the song. I've been doing these things for you. Now what you gonna do for me? Right? I ain't trying to spend no cash if you ain't spending that ass. It's actually a really good song. It's a funny song too. But the point is, when you fall into this transactional sex, this is what happens. Instead of actually gaming a girl and talking to a girl that is genuinely liking you for who you are, right? This is why I say you can't really build with those girls that just want a guy for his money. Like, what is your feelings come in, right? Well, how do you, like, are you just gonna stay with a guy because he has money and you don't necessarily like him? Those relationships usually don't work out anyway. Those usually those women, they have all the money they want. I mean, they probably have a baby daddy, but it's like, come on, at the end of the day, you want a relationship. And especially for guys. So that's why you got to be careful on how you spend your money. Um, and you don't want to be just recklessly leading with money. And how do you lead with money? Setting really high standards first date, going to a five-star restaurant, spending $400 and $500. Now you're setting the standard. So when you set the standard like that, then that's what she's expecting on the regular. You spend $500 on the first date, $300 on the second, and then you try to go back to a small date, and she's like, "Nigga, what is this? What the fuck are you doing? Where we going? Where? Starbucks? That's not even a date, right? Because you set the standard so high, and you still didn't get none, and you doing all of this. You're not letting her earn anything. And listen, I said this a while ago. You want to go to a five-star restaurant on the first day? Okay, cool. 400. I'll go if I want to go. If you suggest, okay, but let's say if I spend a $500 bill, what's the tip going to be? $100? Are you willing to give $100 tip? I'll spend that because I can. I'll spend that if you're willing to tip $100. Are you willing to tip $100? Unless you can handle that tip, we ain't going on no fucking $500 date, especially for the first date. Especially 500, even still, even if it's not our first date. If I'm spending $500 on a date, you're paying the tip. I don't mind that because I don't believe in doing 50-50 anyway. But if I'm spending $500, you're paying the tip. Especially if you're my girlfriend. If you're my wife, different story, because that's just how I was raised. It's a little different when she's actually your wife. Unless she treats you, right? And don't get this confused, guys. I once had a girl. It was some girl I was messing around with. But the girl, long story short, the girl asked me out. She was like, "Oh, we can go see a movie or something." I'm like, "Okay, sure, cool, we can do that." I was like, "That's your treat, right?" And she was like, "Oh, I find it suspicious how, this is your second time asking me if I'm gonna pay." Like I like joked around with her like the first time we went out, but I actually still paid. But I be spending a lot of money, so I was like, "Hey, listen, you gonna pay, right?" But I said it jokingly. Nevertheless, um, it was it was some truth to it, yeah. But then she said that the second time, and I'm just like, all right. And she was like, "Oh, I think we should part ways." I'm like, "Bitch, first of all, you asked me out. If someone asks you out on a date, if a female asks you out on a date, whether it be your girlfriend or some random girl, you are expecting her to pay. You don't ask somebody out and then say, "Oh, I'm expecting you." No, you can't ask somebody out and been expecting them to pay. Don't ask me out if you're not gonna pay. You can't invite somebody out somewhere and then not be paying. Think about how crazy that sounds. You're inviting somebody out to spend their own money on them, on you. How crazy does that sound? Absolutely. She was like, "Oh, well, I was just reciprocating the energy he was putting out because I had made a post and I was like, who wants to come to Miami with me?" And this bitch called herself cutting me off not too long ago. I was like, "What the fuck do you mean? Like, bitch, fuck out of here. Like, what are you talking about?" You know? Now, when it comes to spending money, it is okay under certain conditions, right? First of all, you have to be able to afford to spend money to go on dates. And I think the first few dates, just just a part of being a man, you should at least pay for the first 2 to 3 dates. Just because. Just because. Right? Just because. Now, if she never offers to pay or to do anything, she's a selfish broad. She's a selfish broad, and that's something you should take into account. Especially if she's always talking about only her, everything is about her. She never offers anything. She never offers to even make something. I can understand if she didn't have a lot of money, but if she never offers anything, she's a selfish broad. And that's something that you guys should definitely take into account. Right. So if you're going to be paying for things, first of all, you have to be able to afford it. So if you don't have a job, if you don't work, if you still live at home with your mom, or if you have a job that's maybe part-time and you make barely almost no money, right? Right. Listen, if you're making 20,000 a year, you should not be taking care of most things unless you're supporting a homeless person. And you don't necessarily have to be poor and destitute on the street to be homeless. You could be living with your parents and be homeless because that is not your home. That is your parents' home by definition. Right. Second prerequisite for spending money on females. Uh, you don't want to go too crazy until after the probational period. What does that mean? So usually when you have a job, you get like a 90-day probational period before they actually confirm that the job is actually yours, right? Um, and it's the same thing with a girl. Now she's not necessarily your girlfriend, but if you want to establish a girl, you and a girl as a thing that you guys are talking, and you're not necessarily official, but you want to see if after those 90 days, um, if she's solid enough to actually, take her on a trip with you. If she's solid enough to actually buy her gifts, because it's okay to buy girls gifts. That's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with buying gifts. Now you want to see if she's solid enough to actually buy her a gift and stuff like that. And not only that, also, you don't want to create a monster because, like I said before, if you set super high standards and you're spending all this money and buying all these gifts at the beginning of a relationship, then that's a standard you live up to. You're spoiling that girl. And if it's especially if it's not something can maintain, that's not something you want to do. And just even still, you want to lead up to something. You want the girl to be grateful for you, right? You want to at least build some type of attachment. So you're seen as more of a prize. So you've been doing all these things with her. You guys probably been making love, going on dates. Then maybe after the 90 days, buy her a little gift, maybe a pair of sneakers, or um, even if you want to give her an allowance, right? I just started doing that, giving the girl I talk to girls I talk to an allowance, and it's nothing crazy, like little $100 every other week, get their nails done, maybe buy them a gift here and there if they're not feeling too good. I don't go too crazy. I only do it because I can, right? I can honestly support a family at where I'm at right now in life. But the point is, you don't want to do too much, right? You don't want to do too much at first. You want to make sure she's a solid girl. Make sure you have some significant type of, you gotta at least be making 60, $70,000 a year if you're going to be giving some girl an allowance. That's for starters. I wouldn't advise it anything other than that unless she's like looking for a job and she's hurt, you know what I'm saying? Or her pockets are hurting more or less. I wouldn't advise it otherwise. Now, once you meet those requirements of making a certain amount of money a year and you know making sure she's past that probation period, so usually maybe if she's your girlfriend and you've been talking to this girl for about a few months now, 2 to 3 4 months maybe, and everything is solid, unless you're waiting for marriage. If the sex is bomb, definitely. If you know she's a good girl, if you know she's worth it, if this is one of the top girls in your rotation, anything of that sort, okay, cool. You can spend that money. Now, on the lowest level, if you are a high school kid, if you have decent amount of money, now these are just rules to live by. Because obviously we don't do 50-50. I already said that plenty of times, because when you do the 50-50, you deal with 50-50 issues. Now, when you deal with 50-50 issues, you deal with things like, okay, your girl's not going to be as submissive to you. So when you walk in the house, you're like, hey, babe, can you make me some food? The fuck you mean make me some food? How about you make me some food? I always make you food, right? Or if you come in the house and you're like, babe, I'm in the mood. Well, I just finished working 16 hours. I'm not in the mood tonight. And that might seem like bullshit. Sometimes it is. A lot of the times it is, but sometimes it can be very true because women don't have as much energy as men. So she could be genuinely tired. So if you want things your way, then make things easier for her, right? Especially if you're in a monogamous relationship, if you don't have a rotation and stuff like that, and this is the only girl you're seeking out to make love with, what you want to do is uh, lighten her load, make things easier for her, and just take on more responsibilities so she doesn't have to. This way she can fulfill all your desires and just do what God honestly made her for. That's honestly what you have to do. Now, on the lowest level, if you're like a high school kid and you got money and you're going out most of the time, it should be at least 60-40. At least 60-40, right? At least 60-40, because you put your girl more in a submissive state. So 60% of the time you should be taking care of most of the stuff. Even at the lowest level, even a 60-40, right? Before I was making what I was making now, I was doing 60-40. because I knew you allow a girl to be more of in a submissive state if you can take care of most things. And if you can't go, if you don't have the money for it, you can't take care of it, don't go out. Like, I don't feel like going out today. And I just paid a whole bunch of bills, so I don't really feel like going out right now. Or you just make some type of excuse. But if she's willing to treat you, say, okay, cool, then I'll go out. But I don't really want you to spend, trying to kind of deny it. But then she's like, all right, you can come. All right, cool. So at least it should be 60-40 on the lowest level. Um, the next, depending on how much you make, you should be doing at least 70-30. 70-30 or 80-20. Yeah, I'm doing the math. 80-20, right? So you're paying most of the time. 70-30 is when you had a girlfriend for a few years, you're taking care of most of the bills. You're taking care of most things. And just most of the time. And usually on average, men usually make more money than women anyway. The women that make, above, the 15% that make above six figures or more, that's a very small percentage. I think that's probably less than like 3 or 2% of women. And that might be a generous number, right? So, and that's in the United States, of course. So, an 80-20 is like, this is your girlfriend for years. You're about to marry her. And the only reason I say don't take care of 100% of things if this woman is not your wife, because she is not your wife. She has to know that there's a difference between being my girlfriend and actually being my wife. When you're my wife, you are entitled to certain things. And when you are entitled to certain things, there's a difference between being my girlfriend. So you have to let her know there are levels to this shit. And she has to work up to things. You just don't reward anything that's gained easily. Women are not grateful for it, whether that be love, objects, whatever it is. And that's human nature, period. Anything that somebody has to work for, anything that somebody invests time into, they will be more grateful for. So if you come around just paying all her bills and she's not your wife, you're creating a monster, especially when she didn't have to work for it. And then when you take it away, she's gonna say you're a narcissist, or you're manipulative. You made her dependent on you, and now that you took it all away, she's so dependent on you. Now she's starving. Don't do that shit. And this is why I say, just don't come out just paying a girl's bills. Don't be spoiling her and doing everything for her. That's why you put her on a probation period. And a lot of times, according to studies, it takes women months. It was studies done on how long it took people to fall in love. It took men days to weeks to fall in love. Women, it took months, at least two months. And usually it takes 2 to 3 months to build that attachment, whether that be sexual and just in general, to build that type of consistency for that girl to actually fall in love with you. So the 90-day period is perfect. It's perfect to court this girl, to see what her personality is like, to see if you think this is a girl that you can wife, right? Given certain standards. So you just can't be out here giving, just giving, and she's putting in no work, right? And if you feel like you're doing too much and you're not getting the equal, or well, you'll never really get equal. Because men and women aren't equal. Let's be frank about it. Um, you never really get equal, but if you feel like you're not getting enough out of it, then stop. Just stop. Stop giving so much. Pull back. Don't necessarily complain, but let it be known. Like, listen, I just feel like um, I'm putting more into this than you are, and I'm gonna just chill for a bit. It's like, what does that mean? Just be like, I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna just chill for a bit. I'm doing too much, right? Um, but it's okay to give your girl allowance. It's okay to give her money. Sometimes it's okay to be nice. It's okay to be romantic. Is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But be aware of transactional sex, so you're not ending up like R. Kelly when he's talking about, uh, you know, I've been doing these things for you. Now, what you gonna do for me, right? I ain't going down on you if you ain't going down on me, right? So you want to be careful to make sure you don't fall into a situation that is transactional, right? Transactional sex. You want validational sex. You want a girl that's chasing your validation. You want a girl that is actually interested in you romantically, right? Obviously, sexually. Not because you've been doing all these things for her and giving all this money and now you're expecting something, right? Because then she's going to call you manipulative and you open yourself up to all this other crazy shit that you shouldn't be going through anyway. So that's one thing that I say is watch out for falling into transactional sex. And that's pretty much that, guys. So we're gonna end this podcast off, and then we're gonna take some questions from our Patreon guys. I'm gonna end it on YouTube right now because I'm gonna play R. Kelly. Um, what you gonna do? What you gonna do for me? What the hell's the name of the song again? Yeah, I think that what you gonna do for me. Anyway, so we're gonna end it off here, and then I'll take some questions from our Patreon guys. YouTube is done, and then I'll still stay on live. Alexa,